Hello educators, and welcome to the Quantitative Benefits and Practical Applications training created by the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences Outreach Coalition, Cafe Latino. As more people travel and cultures intermingle, it is vital to incorporate diversity and inclusion into training so that employers and employees can become more inclusive as to attract and keep top talent within their respective industries. Some employers view diversity and inclusion as an enabler of growth and progress, while others are unsure of how to create a more inclusive workplace. This webinar's objectives are to discuss the relevance of diversity and inclusion and the quantitative benefits so you can see the positive impact it has on productivity and profitability. We will also discover practical applications of diversity and inclusion that will help you have a more fulfilling and successful professional life. Some may wonder why diversity and inclusion are important, especially when the old way has been working, the if it isn't broke, then why fix it mentality. Well, diversity attracts top talent, skillful and passionate people who are looking for environments where they can grow and evolve. This is the type of person you want on your team because they're looking for ways to better customer relations, workplace satisfaction, while also providing thoughtful and thorough consideration regarding business decisions. Companies with higher levels of diversity can create an ethos that resonates at all levels of employees, as well as customers, suppliers, investors, and stakeholders. Now let's take a look at some data from research conducted by McKinsey & Company. This data shows gender, ethnic, and cultural diversity are connected to financial performance. Multiple companies worldwide have succeeded in making considerable improvements to diversity and inclusion within their organization and are substantially benefiting from these efforts. The pie charts on the right are visual representations of the diversity within graduating college classes and executive boards in the United States. As you can see, African Americans comprise 10% of U.S. graduates but hold only 4% of senior executive positions. Hispanics and Latinos comprise 8% of graduates versus 4% of executives. For Asian Americans, the numbers are 7% of graduates and 5% of executives. In the United States, women were in charge of 6.4% of companies in 2017 and held a disproportionately small share of line roles on executive teams, with women of color, including Asian, Black, and Latino women, holding an even smaller share. As you can see by the top figure that represents females in executive staff roles, only 7% are Black, 10% are Hispanic, and 13% are Asian, while 69% is white. The second figure represents staff roles, which is comprised of 15% Black women, 6% Hispanic, 6% Asian, and 71% white. The graph to the right is a visual representation of the profitability of companies 2011 to 2015, with top levels of diversity and bottom levels of diversity. In 2014, McKinsey & Company found that the companies with the most ethnically diverse executive teams, not only with respect to absolute representation, but also a variety or a mix of ethnicities, are 33% more likely to outperform their peers on profitability. That's comparable to the 35% outperformance reported in 2014, with both figures being statistically significant. In a 2017 dataset, companies in the lowest quartile on both gender and ethnic diversity are more likely to underperform their industry peers on profitability up to 29%. This research shows that diversity and inclusion within the workplace results in faster and better decisions and better business results and profits. But how do we create a more diverse and inclusive workplace? It starts with awareness. Awareness is the beginning of change and vital for effective interactions between teammates. There are many aspects to consider regarding communication. Some factors to consider when working with other people is the complexity of their own life and minds that ultimately affects their interactions with you. Though we cannot control other people's behaviors and emotions, we can behave and communicate in professional and open ways that aid in progress. Some key factors to consider are nonverbal behaviors. Nonverbal behaviors vary between ethnicities and social classes and geographically. In a diverse work environment, it's important to maintain cognizance of our own nonverbal communication because we may be affecting others in ways we are unaware of, and the company culture. Another aspect to consider is communication styles. These are the ways a person interacts and exchanges information with others. There are 4 basic communication styles that we'll further discuss in the next slide. These styles are passive, passive-aggressive, aggressive, and assertive. Being aware of communication styles can help you have more effective interactions with people you might not fully understand or agree with. We should also be aware of teammates' values. Knowing other people's values can guide your interactions to that of commonalities and progress versus indifference and hindrance, while also setting healthy and respectable boundaries. Every person has a unique communication style, a way in which they interact and exchange information with others. There are 4 basic communication styles: passive, passive-aggressive, and assertive. When we break down these 4 styles, we can better understand the characteristics of each style, standard phrases, and what makes them unique. Passive communicators often display a lack of eye contact, poor body posture, and an inability to say no. Passive communicators also act in a way that states, "People never consider my feelings." But passive communicators are also easy to get along with as they follow others and go with the flow. Some phrases that passive communicators might say are, "It really doesn't matter that much," or "Whatever, it's fine." Next is aggressive communication. It's often apparent when someone communicates in an aggressive manner. You'll hear it, see it, and maybe even feel it. It's emphasized by speaking in a loud and demanding voice, maintaining intense eye contact, and dominating or controlling others by blaming, intimidating, criticizing, threatening, or attacking them, among other traits. Passive-aggressive. The passive-aggressive communication style users appear passive, but within he or she may feel powerless and build up a resentment that leads to acting out in subtle, indirect, or secret ways. An example that a passive-aggressive communicator would use might be, "Sure, we can do things your way," then mutters to themselves, "Your way is stupid." The next communication style is assertive. Thought to be the most effective form of communication, the assertive communication style features an open communication link while not being overbearing. Assertive communicators take ownership and use I statements. They maintain eye contact, they know how to say no, and they voice their needs and desires confidently. Which ones are you? Does it depend on the situation? How does this affect company culture? Take a moment to pause the webinar and reflect on this. One helpful and insightful resource I found is the Executive Diversity Services website. You can double-click the resources at the very end to check them out, but a video on their site featuring Elmer Dixon, President of Executive Diversity Services, speaks about diversity and inclusion and says, "Oftentimes companies are unconsciously centered around one culture that can turn someone of another ethnicity into someone more like the dominant culture because that is how they are measured. That is not inclusion. A value of diversity says there are a range of ways a person can succeed in an organization. This is demonstrated by making sure you feel valued and respected for who you are and not having to change who you are to succeed." To better understand interaction importance between teammates, we can refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. To move up the pyramid, each level, or need, must be met for an individual to ultimately reach self-actualization, which is when a person reaches their full potential. Self-actualization is the goal for each person on a team. For the sake of this training, we're going to assume that our coworkers have their physiological needs met, which brings us to safety and belonging. These 2 fundamental needs are paired together in this training because they are so closely related. For a person to feel as though they belong, a sense of safety must be established and maintained, which is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Each person is different, which is why it's important we stay open to new experiences and share best practices. By being open-minded and practicing active listening, we can reach others more personally and effectively. In any work environment, uncomfortable conversations are inevitable. Knowing this, each person within the team needs to be made comfortable enough to talk about things they're uncomfortable with and to call attention to something they feel might be going askew. To do this, a safe space should be created where the team is free to talk about their differences, expand upon their point of view, and consider others. Part of creating the safe environment is leadership buying into the idea of belongingness. If someone speaking up is being met with resistance, the chances of them speaking up again is greatly diminished, and good things don't happen when the team does not feel empowered to speak up. It is important for everyone to remember a time when they were excluded, shamed, interrupted, and so on, so these lessons can be applied outwardly. Now is a good time to pause the webinar and reflect on a situation where you spoke up and was met with resistance. How did it make you feel? How did it impact your future behavior? The next fundamental is esteem needs. According to the Harvard Business Review, a little criticism goes a long way. The ratio for the highest performing teams was 6 compliments to 1 criticism, while the average teams received approximately twice as many compliments as criticisms, and underperforming teams held a ratio of 3 negative comments to every positive one. Please stop the webinar and reflect or share your experiences regarding feedback, how it affects your performance and interactions with others. Negative feedback is necessary because it grabs a person's attention like a small shock and combats groupthink, which can heavily influence company culture. However, it is important to remember only positive feedback motivates people to continue what they are doing well with more vigor, determination, and creativity. Keeping in mind that others want to belong is key. It helps create an empathetic organization where workers are not afraid to take on the difficult or uncomfortable, which will ultimately lead to a culture of inclusion that people enjoy working in and has higher performance. Self-actualization is at the peak of the pyramid, the highest level. It is only when one's physiological, safety, belonging, and esteem needs are taken care of that one can hope to achieve self-actualization. Self-actualization occurs when you maximize your potential, doing the best that you are capable of doing. It is related to the concerns of positive psychology through its connection with the idea of well-being. Self-actualization is related to positive psychology in 2 distinct ways, as a component of well-being and as a way to measure the nurturing of genius. Why do you want to reach self-actualization? Why do you want others to reach self-actualization? Because these people are interested not just in the growth of their enterprise, but in their own growth as well. These 2 areas are intrinsically linked, one uplifts the other. It takes a lot of work and dedication to create an environment where everyone is given the opportunity to thrive. When someone says something you might not be happy with or like, remember that you have a responsibility to listen and take appropriate action when necessary. This is the time when communication styles, cultural mores and norms, and personal experience are considered, which either unite people or they serve to set boundaries and agree to disagree. Differences exist, and an adjustment period needs to take place for the team to reach a new state of normalcy and for cohesion to happen again. Working with others in a globalizing world is fascinating and at times overwhelming. However, Dr. Cece Suarez has some words of encouragement. Understanding is something that is usually sought for the self but often forgot for others. I can never know exactly how someone feels, but I can always listen and learn about others' perspectives. Here are the resources used for this webinar. We hope you enjoyed it and that you gained insight on how to make your workplace more inclusive for everyone.